Hello, my dear students. In today's session, we are going to discuss the character sketch of Taplow, Mr. Crocker Harris, and Mr. Frank, and we will also discuss the question answers given in the book. So, let us first start discussing the characters of Taplow. So, John Taplow, we see that how Taplow, he is a teenager, a 16-year-old boy, and he is a student of lower fifth grade. And we see that how he is interested in science subject and he hopes to specialize in science in the next term after getting the remove. His conversation with Frank gives a wide view of his character and also the character of Crocker Harris. Thus, it also discloses about his likes and dislikes. We also come to know that how he dislikes classic literature, but he is interested in subject science. He has a strange attitude towards Crocker Harris, and we come to know about the mixed feelings that he has towards Crocker Harris. And he also presents his views about the latter, that is Crocker Harris, in a very frank and straightforward manner. But we see that how he is an obedient and hardworking boy who comes to do the extra work given to him by his teacher on the last day of the term, too. He is very dutiful too, as it is clear from the fact that he is not easily dissuaded from extra work, even when Frank and Mrs. Miley Harris they ask him to. He is also a keen observer of character. He understands his teacher, Mr. Crocker Harris, very well and even mimics him. We find him imitating his teacher, although it is not a polite thing to do. He is also able to see through the tricks of the teachers, some of whom are considered as sadistic and some dishonest. But overall, he finds science subject a good deal more exciting than the classic Greek literature. And in spite of Crocker Harris's weaknesses as a person and teacher, we find that how Taplow still admires and likes him. Next in the chapter is Mr. Frank Hunter. Mr. Frank is a young teacher and he shows a better understanding of student behavior and psychology. He is humble towards his students, he has a friendly attitude towards his students, and thus he is quite popular in school. Here, also in this chapter, it is through the conversation, his conversation with Taplow shows that Taplow is very comfortable discussing the matter with him. Even though Frank is easy in his attitude, he is not of the kind who will appreciate sarcasm on fellow teachers. He quickly points out to Taplow when Taplow gets carried away, mocking Crocker Harris. But we also understand that all these acts done by Mr. Frank was just a pretension. He was pretending that he did not appreciate the sarcasm on fellow teachers. So, thus, when we see the character sketch of Mr. Crocker Harris, how we see that he's rather moody teacher who is not interested in teaching science. He has to teach and feels that he only gets dull and slow learners. He also loves to hear scandalous talk about his colleagues like Mr. Crocker Harris, of whose popularity among students he feels jealous of. We see also that how he derives a grim pleasure in listening to Taplow's mimic of Crocker Harris and is rather eager to hear the joke Harris told the students in the class. As a teacher, he seems to lack the moral also. For instance, when he reveals the result to his students against all the norms before the headmaster announces them. That means does not follow rules and regulation. Then how we see that he also gives wrong suggestions to the students when he suggests Taplow to cut the class to bunk the class. So this way, we see that how Mr. Frank is rather a crafty teacher who doesn't believe in observing formalities and he cares little about the rules and regulation. He's also envious of Crocker Harris. Thus, we see that how he lacks dedication and commitment towards his profession. Next, we have Mr. Crocker Harris. How we see that how Mr. Crocker Harris uh, he teaches Latin and classic literature. He is an extremely sincere and we can say hardworking teacher who follows the rules of the school very meticulously. We see that he is highly disciplined and principled, and he's a teacher who would not compromise on the rules and regulation to suffice the sentiments of students. Suffice means to satisfy the sentiments of students. Some may agree with his way of thinking, others may criticize him of being too fastidious. Fastidious means observing the rules and regulations strictly. So he is a teacher who is also hard on students when it comes to studies. So we see that he is a hard taskmaster, as we see in this chapter that how he asks students to rectify their mistakes by writing it 50 times in the notebook. And he was not of those teachers who would crack romantic jokes in the class to make studies fun. Rather, his jokes were poor, and thus we can say that how he is also very poor at cracking jokes. And as remark made by Taplow that Mr. Crocker Harris, he was not a sadist, and that's why they used to get afraid of him. They were scared of his presence. And we also see that how Mr. Crocker Harris, he maintains a respectable distance from the students. He does not feel flattered as other teachers do by the students' expression of their liking for him. Rather, he shrivels up like a nut. He tries to maintain a distance with the students. And as discussed earlier, he is not a sadist, also. He never enjoys by giving pain to the students. Then, he does not tell the result to the students before it is officially announced by the headmaster, as other masters do to win students' favor and respect. He also never makes undue favors to the students, and thus we see that how Taplow also bitterly remarks that he is hardly human, because he feels that he never considers the extra efforts done by the students. And but we can say that he is never partial to the students. He gives them what they deserve. So thus we can conclude that how he is very objective, he is impartial, he is reserved, and very sincere to his profession. And this is about the character sketch of Mr. Crocker Harris. Now let us discuss the questions that are in the book, page number 56 of your book Hornbill. First question is comment on the attitude shown by Taplow towards Crocker Harris. So we see that how Taplow's attitude towards Mr. Crocker Harris is extremely ambivalent. We can say that how he has mixed feelings towards him. He shows simultaneously his liking as well as disliking for him. In the beginning, we find that how he is bitter that Mr. Crocker Harris has called him to do extra work on the last day of the school. Although Mr. Crocker Harris neither tells the result before it is officially announced nor gives credit for doing extra work as other masters do, he is not a sadist according to Taplow. And Taplow likes him and obeys his orders. Thus, we see that how when Mr. Frank suggests him to leave as Mr. Crocker Harris is late, Taplow does not follow his suggestion because he is extremely afraid of him. Even when Mr. Crocker Harris's wife tells him to go for quarter an hour to get a prescription made from a chemist, he goes most hesitantly. And only after, when she assures him that she would take the blame if Mr. Crocker Harris comes in the meantime. So we see that how there are different remarks made by Taplow towards Crocker Harris, which shows both his bitterness towards Crocker Harris as he is upset that day, he wanted to play golf that day, and also the fact that which he admits in front of Mr. Frank that how much he admired Mr. Crocker Harris. Now, the second question: does Frank seem to encourage Taplow's comment on Crocker Harris? So yes, we definitely find that Mr. Frank he does encourage Taplow to make comments on his teacher Crocker Harris. So throughout the play, Frank encourages Taplow. He very cleverly asks him several questions to provoke him to make these kind of remarks against Crocker Harris. As for example, we can take the example like when he wants to know why Crocker Harris does not tell the result before it is officially announced, just like the other masters do. And Taplow's answer contains no malice when he says, "You know what he is like, sir." When Taplow complains about that he has kept in to do extra work, Frank again provokes him by saying that extra work, that too on the last day of the school, and thus he tries to provoke Taplow here. Then he also suggests that Taplow should go and play golf as Crocker Harris was already late by 10 minutes. And when Taplow mimics Crocker Harris, calls him hardly human instead of we can say, we see that Frank, how he again provokes him and he asks him again to mimic the way Crocker Harris had told him the things. Then he also inquires from Taplow that if it is true that the students are afraid of Mr. Crocker Harris because he beats them. So at this, Taplow comes out with this comment that Crocker Harris is not a sadist, and when he sees that students, when they like him, he shrivels up like a nut. So we see that how Mr. Frank, he derives the pleasure in encouraging Tableau to make comment on Mr. Crocker Harris. So you need to answer the question citing various examples from the chapter where we find that Tableau encourages him and provokes him to make comment on him, to imitate his teacher, and in this way you will conclude the answer. What do you gather about Crocker Harris from the play? This we have already discussed in the beginning. So you have to draw a character sketch of Crocker Harris from the play. So, dear students, I hope you have clearly understood the chapter. So, thank you all for listening. Have a nice day, all of you.